Well, most people hear the words "you have so much potential" and they take it as a compliment. I'm going to challenge that today here on episode 116 of Spencer Uncensored. Why? Because potential is not a compliment. Potential is actually just a diagnosis. The moment someone tells you that you have potential, or you tell yourself that you have potential, you just confirm something super uncomfortable, probably. There's a gap. There's a gap between what you're capable of and what you are currently actually producing or the results you're seeing. So potential is actually just reserve power. It's what's felt in or what's left in the tank, right? That hasn't been converted yet. So by definition, if you're still talking about your potential, you haven't fully stepped into it completely yet. So think about that for just a second. Nobody who's fully expressed talks about their potential. They talk about their results. And potential is what remains when results haven't caught up to the capability yet. So the next time someone tells you that you have so much potential, uh, hear for what it actually is. It's not probably a compliment as much as it is a diagnosis. So I'm Spencer Combs, the Defiant Coach. This is Spencer Uncensored episode. Actually, it's 117. I thought it was 116. I just realized it's 117. Here we talk about the real reason your business isn't giving you one of three things, if not all three: profit, productivity, or purpose. So today, let's talk about why so many capable people, people with genuine talent, real ability, legitimate opportunity, they never fully close the gap between what they're capable of and what they're actually producing. Because, well, before we get into the framework, I want to share something a little personal. So back in 2016, which now it was 10 years ago. That feels like it was forever. And yet it feels like it was so close. 2016, I was working with a couple of coaches, not one, two. And it's not cheap and neither is it comfortable, but you don't hire I tell people this all the time, like if you hired a physical trainer and you walked out of the gym not sore in some kind of way, you wouldn't feel like you actually had a workout and you wouldn't think it was worth your money. So I tell my clients all the time, those that I'm coaching, I'll say, listen, if this was uncomfortable for you, just understand you got your money's worth, right? So these coaches, they challenge me. Not really in a soft and encouraging way. They challenge me to get more from my business and from myself. Understand this was a time frame in my life where I had just taken over in a brokerage position as a productivity coach, real estate brokerage specifically, and they held a mirror and showed me a gap. And I will tell you that in that 2 years that followed, we went from, and we were doing well, by the way. Don't get me wrong, but the potential was there, right? He's like, oh, you got so much potential. Potential doesn't necessarily people that are living in their potential don't talk about their potential. They talk about the results, right? So these two held a mirror up to me and realized we had a lot more ground to cover, and we had an explosive program in a part of the country that most people wouldn't expect you to have over 200 real estate agents in a program and crushing out. In the 4 year time frame, we did over 200 million in volume with agents that were either they were probably I think average time frame was less than 18 months, and we were doing and this is an average area where the sales price back then was around 170,000. So that gives you a little bit of point of reference, right? But they held that mirror up to me and showed me the gap. So I had been ignoring it for longer than I wanted to admit at the time. So there's always some potential. So that challenge disturbed me. And that disturbance brought out more of my potential than years of self-motivation ever did. Because here's what I learned from that particular season: motivation fades. And you would have heard me say this in other contexts as well. We don't need motivation. We need what our goals are going to require is emotional leverage. And disturbance, it doesn't fade. Like it's always going to be, there's always going to be some level of disturbance. So I always talk about using that for fuel too, by the way. So once you can see the gap clearly enough, it becomes intolerable. And intolerable gaps produce real decisions. If you understand the drift to drive framework that we teach in Momentum and Mastery, which I gave away the copy that I had here, but Momentum and Mastery is the book that we talk about all this kind of stuff. Um, Disturbance will lead to decisions, and a real true decision will lead you to commitment. Let's be honest about this too. I have a gap right now. We're sitting here right now. I'm not standing in front of you as someone who has fully stepped into all their potential. I'm standing here as someone who knows the framework, uses the framework, and is still working the framework every bleep day. Why? Well, easy. Cultural gravity doesn't have a favorites list. It's going to grab on everyone, including the coach, including the guy that you're following online. It attacks everyone. So let's talk about some of these odds. Because the odds are not in your favor, and I don't mean the generic motivational version of a freaking bumper sticker. I mean specifically the odds that a capable person, someone with genuine talent and real ability, actually closes the gap between what they're capable of and what they produce. The odds aren't actually that good. Research consistently shows this. The number one predictor of underperformance in high capability individuals isn't a lack of talent or opportunity. Quit blaming everything outside of you. It's going to be the absence of something or someone that makes the gap intolerable enough to actually act on. Only about 8%, if I remember correctly, 8% of the people who set goals actually achieve those goals. And those are the goals, by the way, that they consciously chose, not the full expression of their potential. 8%. Most people who are living below their potential don't even know it. And it's not because of lack of self-awareness so much. It's more likely because cultural gravity has gradually adjusted their reference point, what they're willing to settle for. They've driven it downward, so far downward until eventually the gap that they're seeing in front of them, it just feels normal. Like this is what life is supposed to be. We begin to rationalize why we're here and what we're going to be doing here. The ceiling, what you thought was the ceiling, now becomes the floor. Because the compromise, it simply becomes the standard. And what started as a temporary accommodation becomes a permanent address. Like this is just how we've always been. Nobody in my family has ever gone further. I've always, right? And all the excuses start showing up, and we justify why we're in the position we're in and why we're not going to cross the gap and go into our full potential. Truthfully, the odds they're not stacked against average people either. Average people expect average. The odds are actually stacked against capable people because capable people have just enough success to make comfort feel earned. Think about that for a second. Capable people have just enough success to make comfort feel earned. And earned comfort is the most effective form of drift that there is, which brings me to drift. We talk about drift considerably in the first part of the book. So drift is why potential stays potential. And let's get real straightforward about this too. I've said it before. It's worth saying again. Drift itself is not actually the villain because drift is the natural resting state, and we're always looking to have some level of comfort. The reason why we want more success, more money, better relationships, better careers, all these things are in an effort to help us get into a better level of lifestyle. That lifestyle could easily be rebranded or relabeled as a drift of some sort, right? Drift itself is not actually the villain. It's the resting state. It's the habitual level of comfort you've established, right? Your lifestyle you've built, the businesses you've created. Wherever you are right now, that's a form of drift. So it's your current normal, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. The problem is not actually drift. The problem is unintentional drift. The drift you don't choose, the drift that cultural gravity created while you were busy doing other things, right? It's the letting go of your physical fitness. It's the letting go of the relationships and not having, doing, having the connections you should, right? It's the doing the minimal at work because you're doing other things. You're focusing on other parts of your life. The drift is where you took your hands off the wheel and the current just kind of moved you somewhere you never actually decided to go. Unintentional drift is the real villain here. And here's what makes the unintentional drift so powerful. It doesn't actually feel like a drift to you. It probably feels like life, like it's just life. Feels like you're being realistic. Feels like you're being responsible. In the book, we call it settling, right? Cultural gravity is very good at making the gap between your potential and your output feel like an appropriate distance. Like you've earned the right to stop pushing quite so hard. Like this level is enough. We got to play the enough game. The capable person who is living below their potential almost never recognizes it in the moment. They've adjusted, they've rationalized, they've found a version of the story that makes the gap like palpable or acceptable. And then the odds are that most of them are going to stay there. So unless something or someone disturbs you enough to move, which is exactly what the drift to drive framework is designed to do, right? Unless that happens, you're going to maintain. Now, I want to give you, let's give you a map before we get too deep here. Over the next several episodes, we're gonna spend dedicated time on each of the 4 factors that move someone from drift to drive. Today, I want you to see all 4 so you can understand where this is all going, right? So the first factor is dream. It's the one that I many times have to kind of get people to think outside of their little box. Most people living below their potential have stopped dreaming at the level their capability actually deserves. So cultural gravity, by the way, is going to shrink your dream over time, quietly, gradually, without your permission. It shows up in different ways with people telling you got to be realistic. That's crazy. You're not, you're going to need to shift your focus beyond the horizon of what you're currently seeing if you want to have any changes. So until the vision you have for your life fits inside the life you're already living, instead of pulling you toward the life you're actually capable of, the dream has to expand before anything else can move. And in the next episode, we're going to talk specifically about cultural gravity and how it's been shrinking your dream without you realizing it. So we're not going to talk about it here. Just understand the dream is one of the primary factors. The second one is desire. When you get your dream moving in the right direction, you're going to start eliciting your desire. And more specifically, it's going to help us uncover the emotional fuel underneath that dream. Not what you think you should want. It's not necessarily a revenue number or the title or the recognition. What you actually want at the end of all of it. It's typically a feeling or a sense of something that you're chasing underneath all the goals. It's really about a hierarchy of values. Most people, they're running after means goals. And again, we talk about this in the book, Momentum and Mastery. Those are the things that's going to get you into the feeling, right? It's a vehicle that gets you to the feeling. And when they hit those goals, they feel empty because the means goal was never the real target. The desire has to be real and it has to be yours, or the fuel runs out before you get anywhere meaningful. We're going to unpack that in two sessions from now. Now, the third factor is going to be disturbance. I suspect it'll be one of the ones that's going to get watched the most because Disturbance is really about the activation moment. There's a lot of coaches that talk about activation versus motivation. This, we call it disturbance. We also call it emotional leverage, right? It is the most important factor of the four in some cases. It's probably the most visceral one. Let's put it that way, typically. Decisions are also extremely valuable, which is the next one. I'll get to that in a second. But with this, the question is, of course, it's the gap between where you are and where your potential says you should be has to become super intolerable. And we're going to talk about leverage. We're going to talk about a threshold. We're going to talk about how you actually can manufacture it for yourself, on yourself. It's not comfortable, right? As a matter of fact, things become intolerable is not just uncomfortable. It's not something that just kind of motivates you on Monday morning. It's intolerable, right? I had these coaches get me super disturbed in 2016. They held that mirror, couldn't unsee what was in it. That's what produces real action, not inspiration, disturbance. You don't need motivation, you need emotional leverage. So we're going to go deep on this one because, to be honest, most people never really get disturbed enough to make a real decision. We get close to it, we don't go all the way through. So the fourth factor, of course, that's going to lead us to a decision. The decision is the point of no return. It's not a wish, it's not a hope, not a New Year's resolution. It's a commitment. It's with a line drawn in the sand, and underneath it, you're not going to cross back over, right? So the decision is where potential stops being theoretical and starts becoming actual. You're never going to get there because a lot of people aren't going to get there because they never get disturbed enough to need to. So the gap stays acceptable. This is how we maintain the drift, right? The drift stays in comfort, and then potential stays in reserve. There you go. There you have it, by the way. Dream, desire, disturbance, and decision. Those are the four factors. These are the four things that bridge between where you are and where your potential says you could be. And cultural gravity is working against every single one of them right now. So it's shrinking your dream. It's redirecting your desire towards things that won't satisfy you. It's making the gap feel acceptable so you never get disturbed. And it's turning your decisions into wishes before the ink even gets dry on your part of the 92% that don't actually reach their goals. So here's the question. I want you to think about this week. Where in your life or your business is your potential sitting in reserve right now? Not where do you want to be eventually. Where specifically right now is there a gap between what you're capable of and what you're actually producing? More importantly, is that gap bothering you enough to do something about it, or has cultural gravity made it kind of feel like this is just the way it is? Because the only way out of living below your potential is to get disturbed by the gap, not inspired by the possibility, disturbed by the gap. And then make a decision, not a wish, not a goal, not a resolution, a real decision with a line underneath it. Folks, if you're trying to get ready, if you want to be ready, I heard it said not long ago, and it's become a huge mantra for me. Being ready is not a feeling. Being ready is a decision. And that's true about a lot of things in our life. So that's where we're going. I'm going to walk you through every step of it over the next several episodes. So share this episode, let other people know this is powerful stuff. This is how you get into action. If you've ever had a glass ceiling or you feel like you're in a rut, you need this conversation right here. You can also grab a copy of Momentum and Mastery, which right now, limited print run, we're giving them out for free. You just got to pay the shipping and handling if you go to momentummastery.com. The entire Drift to Drive framework lives there, along with the mastery side of the equation, which we'll get to at some point. Everything we're going to talk about in the coming weeks is in that book in detail. So if you want to know which pattern is running your mastery side right now, take the free Defiant assessment at unshakablesecrets.com. It's about a 3 to 5 minute conversation. It'll show you exactly where cultural gravity has the most leverage over your business right now. So subscribe if you haven't yet, please. Hit the button below because next week we're going to go deep on the first factor, the dream, and specifically how cultural gravity has been shrinking yours without your permission. Share this episode, let other people know, make sure you're subscribed. That's next week's definitely one you want to catch. I'm Spencer Combs, the Defiant Coach. Stay defiant, and I'll see you next Wednesday.